people to give me some views. Anyway, it's a somber day, and you can see I have this American flag over here in the distance, and it's at half staff. I mean, like it's such a terrible day, but we've got to move on. He was such a good person too. Had a great family. Now he's dead, but anyway. I don't know what you guys want to talk about. I mean, it looks like they found, they took a sample in one of the rovers on Mars, and it looks like this is the best evidence for life in the past on Mars, which is pretty cool. Just thought I'd bring that up. It's just a little tidbit. JWST, which is the James Webb Space Telescope, hinted at life also by, was it dimethyl sulfide or something? Anyway, it's something that only it's a chemical that on Earth anyway only life gives that chemical off. So could there be a geological way or some other way? I think everyone's trying to find that out right now. And then they categorize it. They try to do it through spectroscopy. So what happens is there's an orbit and it's transiting the sun. So it's right past the sun. And as it's going past and going around, you can catch the atmosphere as it's going behind the star. And you can get a spectrum. And from that spectrum, you can get a good idea of what gases, if any, or if there's an atmosphere. And there was an atmosphere. In fact, this particular star and planet that they looked at with the Hubble years back, and what they found was water vapor. So they were very excited. This time they found carbon dioxide with a better telescope, obviously, the James Webb. They found methane. They found a lot of carbon dioxide. These are two gases that also life gives off. Okay, I'm not sure if they did pick up any more water vapor, but it's a planet that could be a mini Neptune or a super Earth. And if it's a super Earth or a mini, this could be a Haitian planet, which means like hydrogen atmosphere with but an ocean world. These oceans wouldn't probably have no land at all. They'd be so deep. They get so deep with the pressure. Turns the water like into a solid ice. Like that just is just a very weird. It's like Ice 7 or something they call it. Anyway, it's interesting. If you have time, look into it. Look it up. It's kind of cool. I think they made it in the lab. They make a lot of things in the lab. What the heck was I going to say? So, yeah, I mean, they can, here on Earth, they can create temperatures hotter than, the core of the sun. In fact, that's the thing with nuclear fusion. There's no way we'll ever be able to create the pressures that are in the sun. It's the pressure combined with the nuclear fusion creating heat, right? But what was I going to say? The pressure is something we can't create, right? We cannot. But if we get the temperature to be twice, 3 times the core of the sun, maybe that's going to blast off. We think that will create fusion. Now, I mean, we've been trying to talk, this would be free energy. It would be like a star on the planet Earth. And so, it has nothing to do with CERN and smashing particles together. That's a whole different story. People have all these conspiracy theories about that place. I find that interesting too. A particle collider where they shoot like gold protons at like fucking 99.999999 the speed of light, but like fucking and they whip around like with magnets or some shit. I forget exactly what gets their speed going up so fast, but you never can get the speed of light. I mean, it's still under that, but when it hits, I guess it gives us ideas of what those constituent particles, the smallest things, like the subatomic particles, not the atom, but the subatomic stuff, and even smaller than that, right? That's what that is. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here. We were just talking about the sun and nuclear fusion, weren't we? So anyone that can get fusion, I mean, there's so much hydrogen because that's what fusion is in stars. It mainly what happens is, like the first stars were only hydrogen and helium. When you look way back, like to the beginning, far as we can see, because that's looking back in time, far as we can see, and what we see in those first generation of stars that didn't live long at all because they were so big. The bigger the star, the quicker the life. Burns up the fuel quicker. Very inefficient. But and when they go, they blow. They go supernova. Like stars like the sun, it takes a good long time. But even smaller stars that dot like the Milky Way's got 75% of these red dwarfs, which are estimated to be a trillion or two, maybe 2 trillion years before they die, and they're like 10% the luminosity or no, the mass of the sun. Some of these, but so that's a whole another question about a lot of people see when they're young those stars they flare a lot, and this is the vast majority of stars, and not just in our galaxy but in the entire universe. So if that is something that is taken away, like the atmospheres could be blown off early and then that's it. You won't be able to develop an atmosphere because atmospheres are usually created early on, is my understanding, because you have all that heat and stuff and the gases are, you know what I'm saying? It's just a ball of lava and you get the metals that sink to the core. That's how you get a big enough planet like planet Earth. Why does it have a magnetosphere? Like, why do we even have an atmosphere, right? The sun would be blowing it away. Like Mars didn't have the magnetic core that we do, the magnetic field. It's created, the magnetosphere it's called, and that stops charged particles from the sun from A, stripping away the atmosphere, B, getting down and giving us cancer and mutation and all kinds of bad stuff, cancers, melanoma, things like that. But it does show signs of weakening right now, and we know the poles have flipped too. And during that time, does it get weakened? And if that's the case, does that affect life on Earth? Of course it must, if that's the case. We do know that we were wrecking the ozone, which is basically oxygen 3, O3 instead of O2. Just another isotope of oxygen. But this isotope is the ozone layer. But we figured out what we did. It's repairing itself. That's great. But I did a video called the South Atlantic Anomaly, which is a region where there's a hole in the magnetosphere to where a lot of these charged particles get in. In fact, satellites have been zapped going through that area. So either they shut them off and turn them back on, or they just don't go through that area at all. Obviously, the higher the orbit of the higher you go, the less, the more you're going to get hit. You know what I mean? The further down on the planet, the more protected we are, obviously. So we have a couple things of protection. So what causes that? Well, they say it's the spin of the Earth, because the Earth is spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour. Just a little under. And that spin, along with obviously the heavy metals that sunk, there's a liquid molten iron core in the inner, and a solid iron nickel inner core. That's solid, and it's getting more solid and getting bigger and bigger, and that's like that's it getting cooler. So volcanism probably was a bigger thing. Now we talk about global warming, right? Well, here's what, if I was to debate somebody that says global warming is a fact, we know it, all the scientists know it, it's going to get way warmer, we have no chance, we may have passed the tipping point. Now, a lot of this stuff in the data is definitely concerning to me. And I hadn't done so much research on it, but I have all the time to do a lot of research on things, so I do that every day. And, well, this is this is how I would start. I would say, okay, well, during the Carboniferous period, Okay, we know that the Earth was much warmer. There was no ice on the poles whatsoever, and way more trees and a higher level of heat globally, way higher. And somehow got itself back from that. Now, we also know that things change, right? 45 million years ago was the development of the Atlas mountain chain along with the Himalayas. They're basically the same mountain chain, but one's in Africa and one's in Asia, like India, Tibet, Nepal. That's where Everest is. Now, when those popped up, and now the Appalachians and the Atlas Mountains are the same. They're the oldest, so they've had time to erode, so they're very small. They don't really mess up the weather. But when you have like a Rocky Mountains, you notice there's always like a desert, and then there's but with the Himalayas, they're so high up, they really mess up things. So there's the reason for the monsoon and why it's so goddamn dry in Tibet and so wet in India, right? So, but it also is a carbon sucker upper because it's exposed rock, just like the ocean does. The ocean bedrock also, it's called weathering. Weathering. So like when it rains, you're taking some of that carbon dioxide, it gets into the stone and it gets locked in that. And that's like a cycle the Earth's been going through for billions of years. And so there was times when it was hotter. There was times when there was no ice at all on the poles. Technically, we're still in an ice age, I would say, because we are. We are in an interglacial period right now. There's the definition for a ice age is ice on the poles. Now, right now we have retreating ice. Okay, so it's like an interglacial period, but we're still in an ice age. Technically. Now, do I believe in global warming? Yeah. I mean, if you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, I mean, look at Venus, right? It doesn't help the climate get colder, but we're not fools. We know how to mess with the climate to make it different. We could see clouds with sulfur dioxide, which does the exact opposite of CO2 and methane. It's like a bunch of little mirrors. In fact, it's produced all the time. There's a year without a summer, it was called. It was the year after Tambora blew. Krakatoa, Tambora, I forget which one, but it was 1815. 1816 was the year in New England. It was snowing in July. Livestock died. Crops failed all throughout Europe and the Northeast. So you had a lot of unrest, a lot of death, famine, disease. That was created from one volcano that went off a year prior, had put so much sulfur dioxide because it still is the loudest sound that we've ever heard in recorded human history. It was so loud. Regionally, 7 or 8 or 10,000 people, I think, was estimated to have died in that. Maybe more. I know it was like tens of thousands. But what happened was the explosion was so powerful, and it had so much of that gas. Some have less, some have more. So like some volcanoes are like trap volcanoes, like the Siberian traps, and there's some in India, the Deccan traps, and they're over millions and millions. They're called shield volcanoes. The excellent example of a shield volcano is the biggest volcano in the entire solar system, the biggest one that we know of in the universe at this point. Anyway, it's obviously not, but what it is Olympus Mons, and it's a shield volcano. And that's the other thing about Mars, right? We don't think it had plate tectonics. This is and the good reason why, because it didn't move. So, like, you ever see the island chains? Like island chains, it's like doop, 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 doop. And it goes in like in a row. That's because the ocean floor or the ground, there's a volcano in one spot, and it goes off, and then a million years later, it's moved about, 30 miles, right? So you have another island from that volcano. But if it's not moving and you don't have plate tectonics, that one volcano can just sit there and ooze in one spot. And that's what you see on Mars. It's like 3 times the same. I mean, it's like 100,000 feet in the air. It's so high. Like, you wouldn't even know that you're on a fucking mountain. It's so unbelievably large. And it's like, yeah, it's ridiculous. And then the biggest canyon, believe it or not, is also on Mars. That's the Valles Marineris. It's way bigger than the Grand Canyon. But also, it must beat the what the hell you call that? 7 miles of Challenger Deep over in, oh, Jesus Christ. This is going to kill me. But yeah, there's an area where there's on the Pacific Rim. I'll get it and I'll name it. But what was I going to say? So yeah, oh, come on, man. The Marianas Trench, right? That's 7. That you can classify that as a canyon, I guess, as well. Now, if you wanted to go back to like the Permian period, we had 6 mass extinctions. Some people would tell you 7, 6 big ones, and now we're in the 7th right now in the Holocene. This is the Holocene. A pretty big one. It wasn't a mass extinction, but it was a regional one. It was with the North American the lion died, the short-faced bear. There was a 6-foot sloth, a 3-toed sloth. There was the mammoth. There was, shit, come on, Matt. The Smilodon, which was the saber-toothed cat. That fucking thing was gangster. And they're all gone. And they were around 10,000 years ago. So they called the people living at that time in that area Clovis people or Paleo Indians, the actual ancestors of today's Native Americans, Indians, we believe. And a lot of people say, well, it was overhunting. We showed up through the land, because the ice was not as formed, so you had more land at the time, is what I'm trying to say. So you were able to, because it was an ice age, so less water, more land, okay? The minute it starts to melt, you're gonna have less land, right? That's why we don't see a lot of the populations from this time period, because a lot of it was because they lived on the coast, because that's where their food source would be, right? Their food sources were on the coast. So anyway, the Clovis people or the Paleo Indians are basically accused, I would say, of causing the mass extinction of all those mega beasts, all those fauna. I mean, come on. There had to have been, some people like Graham Hancock would tell you it was, some special friggin' reason, or other people tell you the impact hypothesis, but it was such a short period of time ago, there should be a huge crater somewhere in North America. But here lies the problem. If it hit the ice sheet that was a mile thick, you'd have all this massive flooding throughout the entire goddamn throughout all of North America, and you'd have, so that could have contributed to it, I guess. There'd be wildfires all over the place, uncontrollable wildfires, soot put into the atmosphere. Maybe there was a cooling, because we did see that during the Younger Dryas. There's all kinds of debate about that. What was I gonna say? So I'm just trying to do this live with you guys. I wish I could see your comments. I'm just a little confused on how to get those, because so chat filter, top message, community moderation. I'm just confused. Live chat says on, live chat summary says it's on. Participation mode, anyone, message delay, none, some contribution. Confused. Just give me 1 second, guys. It show every message, right? I can't see any messages. Huh. Well, why the hell not, though? Huh? Anyway, yeah, so, yeah, I wish I could get my, figure out the messages. Hide none message. Yeah, none, right? So, is the chat's hidden? Well, fine, I'm an idiot. All right, I'll let you guys go for right now.